Well, hello everyone. Welcome to today's Illinois Legislative Latino Caucus Alumni Association Cafecito, La Cultura Cura, Coping Mechanisms for Latinos During These Difficult Times, presented by Dr. Pamela Fullerton. Before we begin, I want to thank the Alumni Association Leadership Committee for organizing today's Cafecito, all the Alumni Association members, Representative Barbara Hernandez for her leadership, and of course, Dr. Pamela Fullerton for sharing her time and expertise with us today. Um, I don't think Dr. Barbara Hernandez is here with us yet, but when she comes in, I will ask her to say a few words if she won't mind. Oswaldo Alvarez, our executive director, he should be joining us shortly too, so we'll let him speak after Dr. Pamela's presentation. And Elizabeth Villarreal, who is the chair of the Alumni Association Leadership Committee, who's here. Do you want to say a few words quickly? Welcome everybody, Liz.
Yes, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I know you're going to enjoy it. Dr. Pamela Fullerton is wonderful, and I think this is the right webinar at the moment in the days that we're living. And thank you all for joining. Please share the upcoming cafecitos with your networks.
Yeah, thank you, Liz, for your leadership too, and all the leadership committee for putting this together. Dr. Pamela is on the committee as well. Before we continue, also, I would like to invite you to our next cafecito, which is taking place on August 21st from 12 to 1:30 as well. Y el tópico, the name is ¿Y ahora qué hacemos? Navigating immigration law together, a conversation about recent legal changes and how our community can respond. Um, the presenter is Enrique Espinosa, who is el abogado del sombrero, and he's the staff attorney at the Immigration Clinic, Chicago Kent College Law, and most likely you've probably seen him around walking in Springfield, Chicago with a sombrero. So we're very excited that he will be presenting a cafecito and looking forward to that as well. At the end of this presentation, I will be sharing the link so you can start registering for that as well if you're interested and spread the word. Um, with today. So I'm honored to introduce today's speaker. Dr. Pamela Fullerton is the founder and clinical director of the Advocacy and Education Consulting. She is bilingual, or she is a bilingual trauma-informed clinical and educator specializing in mental health support for BIPOC and immigration communities. Dr. Fullerton holds several certifications in trauma, anxiety, grief, and dialectical behavioral therapy and is also a national and international speaker. She's a writer and adjunct professor at Northeastern Illinois University. She's also very proud, or we're also very proud that she's an ILLCF alumni and part of the Alumni Leadership Committee. Without any further ado, the floor is yours, Dr. Pamela Fullerton.
Thank you, Juan Carlos, Liz, everybody for being here. I'm so happy to be with all of you. You know, in our culture, when there's a funeral, right, and hundreds of us tend to show up to those things, although there's sadness, there's also love and community and laughter, and we can hold space for all of those. So today's presentation is going to really hold space for all of those, though this is a time of distress, a really hard impacting our community, our society, being together, just being together in this space will also bring us togetherness and joy and community. And so thank you all for participating in that today. So my presentation, I called it La Cultura Cura because I really believe it does. In all the work that I do with all my clients and all the research that I've done in working with our communities, I know one thing to be true, and that is our ancestors have passed on properties to heal, to survive, to thrive, and to just continue to pursue and persist and support and love each other. And so that's, you know, where I derive this title from. It's also in the therapy world, a common saying that we use when we talk about integrating culture into mental health therapy. You will all have access to the slides. Juan Carlos will send those out during the presentation. So you'll have access to everything that I talk about today. And then, of course, you will have access to me and the ILLCF community. This is not just a one and done type activity. We truly mean it when we're here for you. We're showing up for you. We're showing up for the community. And so, by all means, please feel free to email us, contact us if you need anything after this cafecito. I always talk about the history of our people in the United States and then in our countries of origin. And they are directly connected to each other. There's so much history and imperialism and genocide and cultural dispossession and land theft and all these things that really have become risk factors for us as Latinos in this country. But there's also so much historical and intergenerational based wisdom and strength that we have also attained throughout our history of being a people. And so this presentation is going to honor and validate and affirm everything in our past, everything in our current, all the struggles, in addition to all the support that we have to offer to each other. And so I hope that that's what you get. So when I talk about, I do presentations on historical and intergenerational trauma based on the Latino population or other BIPOC populations. But specifically for us, this idea of root shock is what we see a lot of, but not a lot of people know how to identify it. And so that's one of the first thing I wanted to talk about. Root shock is the psychological consequence of being forced to move or leave one's home, physical or emotional ecosystem. And the history of being Latinos or Hispanic, there is a history of these forced moves. Things that we had to pick up and leave, families we had to pick up and leave, countries we had to pick up and leave. This forced migration didn't sit very well, doesn't sit very well with people. It's not an easy thing to do. And so during the pandemic, one thing that I started to do was gardening. It's really an indigenous form of healing. Our indigenous ancestors, they would garden, they would plant, and then what they would do is they would talk to their plants. That kind of talk therapy, if you will, was very healing for them, but also for the plants. They said that that's why plants grew for them, right? So this concept really started to come to me during the pandemic because every time I tried to plant something and I would move it from its original place and I would put it in a different container, it would eventually die on me. I could say I don't have a green thumb or maybe I didn't caretake it, but the bottom line is that it was grown in a natural place that had what it needed, all the nutrients, all the sun, all the love, everything that it needed to grow and do well in. And then I forced moved it into another pot and I didn't give it what it needed. And this is the idea of root shock for our people and what we're seeing, what the community who's outside of this root shock community doesn't really understand is that we had things that helped us grow. And although we had to move for the plethora of reasons of why Latinos make the migration that they do to the United States, there were huge impacts and changes. And you can see that second plant isn't doing so well. So when I talk about this, I want people to think about what helped you grow in the beginning, where you came from. What were those, positive protective factors that helped you to grow, to feel nourished, to feel full? And then what changed? You need to understand what has changed, what was taken away from that environment. And then the third piece is what can we do to get some of it back? Now, I want you to liken this to grief and loss. When we lose something, it's not like we can get it back if it's lost for good, right? So it will look different. And that look different is kind of what we have to look forward to. I got these pre-questions sent to me from individuals who are probably here today. And one of the questions, like, how can we continue to instill hope? Well, part of that is recognizing it may not be what it looked like before, and it still could look like something good. It may not all be the same, but it could still be good for us. And that to me is hopeful to know I can get back some of the things that I lost. But I have to really know that journey of what was lost before I can start to figure out what I need to fill myself back up with to feel nourished and full and to thrive once again. So that's really the basis of what we're going to be talking about today. As Latinos, we have everyday fights. All right, everyday fights happening with us. And I will, I might say Latinx throughout this presentation. It's kind of the academic side of me. I might say Latinos because that's just historically what we've called ourselves. Please know I am not intending to other anybody or ostracize anybody. It's just kind of, I see them kind of all put together. So I may use the words interchangeably. So we have our everyday fights, right? We're going to start with embodied microaggressions. Obviously, I feel like Latinos are public enemy number one with this administration. And it's not just this administration. This has been ongoing for a really long time. We have had a history of assaults against the Latino population being in the United States, right? So these embodied microaggressions, these everyday assaults, inequalities, insults, invalidations. And you can see this little graphic that I have over here to the right. There's some overt microaggressions in white supremacy that is supposedly unacceptable, although with this administration, they could care less about how socially unacceptable they are. And even some of these things have become acceptable, unfortunately, in our community, right? But for many Latinos, it's more of the covert white supremacy, those socially acceptable things that are impacting us on a daily basis. Continuing to hear us be called illegals or criminals, that Make America Great statement, that, calling our protesters, calling what they're doing, which is legal and in our Constitution, calling them riots, changing policies so that they become English only policies. These are all things that are impacting our community that think about it like death by 1,000 cuts. That's what's happening to us. And if I asked you to name me at least 5 stories of things that have happened to you, family, loved ones just in the last 5 years, I guarantee you can easily come up with 5 situations in which embodied microaggressions were there attacking you, attacking your community. They're happening all the time, all around us, right? So that is one thing we're fighting every day. Secondly, every day we're living in fear. So many of us are living in fear. What's going to happen to our friends, to our loved ones, to our community? Businesses that are going, bankrupt because people are too scared to go support certain businesses in certain neighborhoods, right? So just kind of thinking about the living in the fear and psychologically what it does. There are short-term effects like withdrawing, not wanting to go out, being isolated, right? Wanting to live in the shadows. There's disrupted eating and sleeping patterns that we're seeing happening. There's externalized behaviors like anger that are coming out in individuals that could cause, issues, particularly with when encountering law enforcement, right? And then there's definitely signs of depression that are alluded to in some of these short-term effects. But we're also seeing long-term effects of living in the constant state of fear. And those are things like post-traumatic stress disorder, poor identity formation. You have no idea the amount of Latinos that come into our office to talk about how for years they've wanted to hide from their identity. They just wanted to blend because of so much fear of being a Latino and the stereotypes that come with being a Latino, right? And so now they're in the space of like, who am I? And that's the issues with poor identity formation. Difficulty forming relationships, not knowing who to trust, not wanting to trust people, obviously a distrust of authority figures. And then we're seeing lots of behavioral and academic difficulties happening as well for those who are going to school or even in the workplace as well. Somebody had asked a question about like we want to reduce fear. How do we do that? Well, here's the thing. This administration is crisis manufacturing. That's what I like to call it. They're doing this by purpose and design to overwhelm us as a community, to incite fear in us so that we start having all of these issues. They want that. They want that crisis manufacturing. What we have to do is we have to fight against that. You know, for as much as we need to make sure we stay safe, and I'm going to talk about resources for that later on in the presentation, we also need to live. We can't be that plant that's dying that I showed you in the second slide of this presentation. We need to thrive. We need to find what gives us life again, and we need to live, right? We need to live in order to thrive. We're also seeing, you know, high rates of, you know, mental health issues. Now, for somebody like me who's been studying the Latino community for decades, I've seen this consistently. Those of us in this field, we've seen this consistently, but we are really finally starting to have a platform to talk about this. Our community has some of the highest rates of depression and anxiety than any other racial ethnic group, right? So I have this little image here, and think about anything that's weighing us down as a community. Lack of confidence. So many Latinos talk about imposter syndrome, racism and xenophobia, having trust issues, constant worry and fear, job problems, an unstable future, like what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to my family, my community, my loved ones, relationship strains, so much stress, a culture distress, which is unique to the immigrant population, right? So all of this stuff is weighing on us, and it could lead, and we're seeing it lead to high rates of depression, anxiety, and PTSD within our Latino community. And we're also fighting an ambiguous future. What's going to happen next, right? So what's going to happen with DACA? What's going to happen with these immigration policies? What's going to happen with school policies? What's going to happen with birthright citizenship? And I can go on and on and on, because this administration is crisis manufacturing nearly every day, if not every week, something new, throwing it at us to continue to make us feel this fear and uncertainty about our future. These are everyday fights that we're having. Then you add certain, you know, intersectional identities, okay? So one, we know that Latinos in general, US born and foreign born, so those who did immigrate to the United States, we experience higher rates of depression than any other racial ethnic group. There was a wonderful study done in 2014 by Forrester and Company that looked at bicultural stress, which is also called acculturative stress. That idea of like living in two cultures. So many of us Latinos feel that. We recognize that. You know, having to straddle the American culture and then our Latino culture, right? And they looked at bicultural stress along with context of reception, which is how welcoming is society to this group? Are they very welcoming, or are they, you know, in our case, very hateful, spiteful, negative towards us? And they looked at the impact of those things on immigrant Hispanic youth. And what they found is that when there's high bicultural stress and high negative context of reception, so being received negatively by the public, we see higher rates of aggression and rule-breaking behaviors. Remember that externalized anger I just talked about in the last slide, right? So we see higher levels of that. And it doesn't matter how involved the parents are, how involved the family and community are. It doesn't matter what their peers are like. None of that. What matters is how much bicultural stress do they have, and how negatively are they being received in the public. You put those two red flags together, and we see all sorts of horrible things happening in our community. Underneath that are high rates of depression and anxiety that are not being talked about and not being dealt with, right? So In this study, we also started to see, and in many other studies, what we notice is that our boys, our male population, tend to externalize behaviors. So that's where we see higher rates of aggression, rule-breaking behaviors, being angry, externalizing, letting their feelings come out, but in a way that's probably not very healthy. Whereas Latinas, we tend to internalize. And that's why we see high rates of suicide-related thoughts and behaviors. Because instead of turning that anger outward into the world, we're turning that anger into ourselves and we're self-harming, right? And so we do see that gender difference happening within our community as well that I wanted to make you all aware of. Lastly, the intersectional identity of being undocumented has some now added risks to that. So we found that there are associated risks with being undocumented in the United States. So not only physical health factors, but mental health risk factors as well. Again, including anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So we're fighting with so much, and there's so many other risk factors that have been found in the Latino community, in addition to what I just talked about. We've got issues with accessing healthcare, accessing mental health. We have issues with political oppression and social oppression. We have issues, obviously, with systemic physical and psychological violence happening in our community. Right now, I say all this to say, it's not like our community is just doom and gloom, like we're determined to have all these risk factors and issues. No, because what we have is each other. What we have is our culture that actually can be very healing if we turn into it. So there are also so many protective factors: parental support, family cohesion, extended family and community, religion and spirituality, mentoring, access to resources. As one of the few Latino teachers at Northeastern Illinois University in the counseling ed department when I first started, I believe I may have been one of the only ones at that point. One thing I did is that I always mentored, all the Latino students who wanted a Latina female to talk about the struggles with. I was like, yes, more than happy to be a mentor and support, right? So we see that being a really strong factor in our community. One thing that ILLCF does is that they're constantly having these cafecitos, having these opportunities for mentoring and access to support and community. That is a protective factor in our community that we have to take more advantage of, right? Access to resources. When we do find access to medical and mental health career services, we bring our people along. You have no idea. I don't have to advertise my mental health business. We get all of our business from referrals, right? My friend, my cousin, my grandmother, my mother, we all need support. Come on in. We're going to be able to help everybody we possibly can. Same with, when they find other social services and they find a community that supports them, they bring in friends and family, and that's a protective factor for us to introduce people to these resources. We also find that our community, when we use our advocacy skills, it becomes a really strong protective factor for us. So just think about being here today. You're going to learn so much that then you can share. You're now being an advocate. You're taking action and doing something. That's going to be a protective factor for you. Every time you feel scared and fear and helpless and like you can't move and you're immobilized, take action. These skills you're going to learn today are going to help you to be able to do that. And then having a strong identification with one's ethnic group. Listen, Hispanic Heritage Month is coming up. I mean, I don't know if this administration is going to acknowledge or honor that, but I don't really care. We had a Puerto Rican Day Parade in June in Humboldt Park here in Chicago. It's nothing but love, right? Just love and honor and parting with each other. Each of us have over the summer, I know we have our own independence, like parades and picnics and family reunions, all that stuff, being proud of where we are, wearing our flags on our cars and and t-shirts, right, with our the name of our country, where we come from. All of that is actually a protective factor for us. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're having an issue with that identity formation, if you're feeling like I can't connect with my community, my ethnic community, that's when it starts to become a risk factor. And then it becomes really problematic in so many ways, not just with identity formation, but with other psychological issues as well. So we really want to make sure that we increase opportunities to connect. So for example, when, ILLCF came to me and they said, we want a specific presentation for Latinos during this time, I was like, sure, no problem, I'll do it, right? Because I'm trying to show how we can increase connectedness with our ethnic identity and community, knowing that this is a positive protective factor for us to have. In addition to that, we've got cultural capital. That's literally what La Cultura Cura means. There's capital, there's wealth in who we are as Latinos. So Martinez and company did this wonderful study in which they've gathered what our cultural capital is as Latinos. And this is what they found. These are our greatest strengths, our greatest source of wealth as a community. We're aspirational, we're linguistic, we're social, we're navigational, we're familial, we're resistant. I'm gonna come back to that. We're perseverant, and our spirituality and our faith, however form it comes in, is also a form of cultural capital for us. Now, my students, in the counseling education department, I always, at some point in the semester, I get a question about the resistant client. What do we do when a client is being resistant? And my answer to them is always, that's their superpower, and we need to see it as such. To be resistant is what we're seeing on the streets every single day when ICE is in a community and the rapid response team is out there, or when everyday folks pull out their phone and start to record who these people are, trying to get the license plates of the cars that the ICE officers are in, questioning them. What's your badge number? What's your name? Tell us this information. That's resistance. Going out there and doing our constitutional right to protest, that's resistance. Going out there and supporting a locally owned business, supporting our fellow brothers and sisters, that's resistance. That's resistance. We resist stereotypes. We resist and combat and overcome micro and macro aggressions. We resist and overcome hardships. That's a superpower for us. So don't let anybody tell you that your resistance is something to be looked down on. Right? So I remember growing up that my resistance to things was always supposed to be seen as shameful. I definitely got labeled that rebellious child, the one who just always had to talk back, had to have the last word, right? So the word that, or the phrase that my mom always used on me was sin vergüenza. That was like her favorite word to use on me. And the older I got, the more I took that as a badge of honor, right? Because so many times, particularly us Latinas, in our community, and we're socialized, and this is not a cultural thing, this is a socialized thing. Women are taught to shrink, to be small, and I refused to do that. I refused to shrink. I refused to be small. So yes, I opened my mouth, and yes, I took my whooping for it. And yes, I always had something to say back when I felt that it was unfair or there was an injustice. And yes, I resisted. And it gave me names, it caused me issues with family. That's fine. That was my superpower, to be resistant, right? And so I want us to see that we have so much cultural wealth, that cultura cura is really there. It's already built inside of us. We just have to start using it more for those of us who haven't tapped into some of these resources. Now, I want to start moving into talking about, like, what can we do? Because a lot of the questions that were given to me were about that. So When I teach about being trauma informed, I talk about the 4 C's: being calm, being contained, having care, and being able to cope. So calm and contain means you got to stay informed. That's number 1, right? To resist that fear and that anxiety and that ambiguity that this administration and many individuals in this society want us to have, we need to stay informed. 2, we need to be able to use our resources to care for ourselves and to care for others right now. And 3, we need to focus on what we can do, what's in our control. That's going to help us cope a lot better during this time. So, staying informed. 1, I don't care what they throw at us, it's not time for us to panic. Panic puts us in a crisis mode. You can't think when you're in a crisis mode. So just a really quick explanation of how our brain works in this manner. The first part of our brain, which is the brain, the back part of our brain here, it was the first part built when we were being formed, okay? This part is our survival part. It's going to do anything it can to help us survive, right? Even if it's things that we may not like very much, like becoming immobilized to do something in fear, right? So it's a really strong system. It's the strongest system in our brain. The last part to be formed is the part in the front, our frontal lobe, and that's the part that helps us think and to stay calm and to be rational and to be able to form opinions and judgments and kind of make decisions that are better for us. If we panic, this part of the brain is going to be triggered and we're going to be all over the place and not going to be able to think straight and make good decisions. So we have to live here right now. We cannot be pulled in by this administration's crisis manufacturing. We're going to feel stuck. We're going to feel helpless. We're going to feel hopeless. That's not a good place for us to be in. So the antidote to all of this is to stay calm, is to stay informed, is to stay grounded, and to put our energy into ourself, the community, and organized advocacy right now. We need to promote messages of encouragement, not only to ourselves, but to our community. We're going to encourage self-care. We're going to encourage community care. We're going to encourage healing. Now is the time to heal and to care for each other. And then lastly, we're going to stay informed through psychoeducation. We're going to learn about the impact to the nervous system all this crisis manufacturing is having. We're going to learn about anxiety, depression, which I've already started to tell you about, that impacts our community. So we really need to be advocates and do something about it. And we're going to learn about how to self-resource and community resource in order to mitigate psychological distress during this time. So what you need to know. I mean, Chicago has been one of the best places to be in, giving everybody as much information so that they're well informed and they know what to do. And I'm proud to live in this city, to be a part of this state, and I'm proud of all of our efforts that we've done. With that said, I have created a document, and you can use this QR code to get to it, for a plethora of resources for immigrants, not just the Know Your Right cards, but so many other pieces of information that might be helpful to our immigrant community right now. So we've got to know this, we've got to know where to find resources, and then we've got to be able to pass them out. Once we, kind of know, all right, I've got a lot of information, it's going to help me stay grounded, it's going to help me and allow me to take action. That's wonderful. Now we have to worry about that care part. That was the third C in our 4 C's, right? This is an example of a wellness wheel. This is another example of a wellness wheel. I've given you both in the slides. And I love giving wellness wheels to my clients in the communities I work with because it's a nice, easy way to see, hey, we've got a lot going on right now in our world. I need to make sure you're taking care of yourself. What areas in your life have you been neglecting right now? So maybe because fear and being overwhelmed and having a lot going on, maybe that's detracted from you actually taking a moment to stop yourself and say, hey, what's going on with me? How can I take care of myself to make sure that I've got enough energy to keep that fight going, right? So these wellness wheels have you think about different areas of your life that maybe you're like, all right, I'm occupational wellness. I have a job. I'm doing all right. I'm able to pay my bills. That's not a problem, right? And physical wellness, I'm going to the gym, 2 times a week. I'm taking my dog out for a walk. I'm sleeping all right. I'm getting my 8 hours that I need. I'm eating pretty good, so that's okay. But maybe what I've been doing though is hiding. I've been hiding from friends. I've been hiding from family. I've been hiding from community. I've just been wanting to withdraw and stay by myself. So maybe you need a little bit of that social wellness. Maybe you need to get out there and go to dinner or have some drinks or go for a walk with a friend instead of by yourself. This wellness wheel is to help you kind of take a moment to be a little bit more self-aware and recognize, what do I need right now that I've been neglecting? Okay. Really important. This other skill that I teach, that's a caring skill for self, is something called SEEDS. And then I've turned it into a Spanish acronym, the acronym DARSE. In Spanish, it means to give. The idea is to give back to yourself, right? So however, which one works for you is wonderful, but this is a daily check-in with yourself. How did I sleep? How am I eating today? Did I get any kind of physical movement? Physical movement exercise is one of the #1 ways to release stress. And I'll give you a biological explanation of that in a second. Do I have any doctor's orders? Is there medication that I should be taking every day? Or am I not feeling well? Do I need to go to the doctor, right? And not put off my physical health. And then lastly, am I doing something for myself, that self-care piece? And maybe that's where that wellness wheel will come in. Like, I'm feeling a little low in this area. I got to fill myself back up. That's what self-care is. In the Spanish version of it, I've kind of altered some things because culturally, what's important to us is this idea of resources, recursos. The idea that we need community, we need to resource sometimes. We may not have everything we need, so we've got to resource out in our community. And to me, that's a really important check-in to have. If I don't have something, how can I reach out to get it? All right. Everything else, though, is pretty much the same. So I'm going to go back to this exercise thing. When stress happens, the first hormone that runs through your body is cortisol, right? Shoots through your body. It's not a good one to stay in your body. Cortisol is the warning to your body that, hey, you're stressed. Something's going on. It's really just supposed to be a warning, and then we're supposed to do something about it, okay? But the more stressed we are and the more we don't do anything about it, the worse it will wreak havoc on your physical and mental well-being. The antidote to cortisol, really the only way to get rid of cortisol, is exercising. It's the #1 thing. It literally burns it out of your system. So if you're super stressed, you got to go do something to burn that cortisol out of your system. The other thing that helps with it is some kind of really healthy, loving touch. Now, it could be self-touch, like giving yourself a massage. We call this self-havening techniques, where you give yourself like a soft, gentle rub on your arms. Or it could be from, a partner or a friend, a hug, those beautiful hugs that you have with your comadre, compadre, right? That you just hug them and you hold on to each other for a few minutes. That type of loving touch is also an antidote to that stress hormone, cortisol. So whatever you have at your disposal, but really those are the only 2 things to get those out. What I have my clients do is I have them take a picture of it. And I'm like, this needs to be one of the main screens of your phone so that every day you're checking on your basic needs. When these things go awry, when you don't sleep well, when you don't eat well, when you're not getting in any kind of physical exercise, when you're not taking your medication or going to the doctor to take care of your physical health, and then certainly when you're not engaging in any self-care, that's when you're going to start to see and amp up that distress. You're going to start to see that you're going to be irritated by even the tiniest of things, that then you might externalize some of those behaviors, aggression or anger, lashing out, or you might internalize, which means you're going to do something to harm yourself, even if it's not suicide related, but harming yourself in terms of withdrawal and isolation and not taking care of yourself. The other acronym that I want to teach you is called HALT. So for many of us in this community, this is a really great acronym to use. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired. For my Latino clients, they love this one probably the most, and then they also add in and incorporate seeds or darse, but they love this because in our community, like food is part of our culture, right? And we know what it looks like when we get hangry. Well, I know what it looks like when I get hangry. It's not a very good thing, right? So hungry, angry, lonely, tired. We need to address these things. We don't want to get to a point where we haven't paid attention to this because we're going to start to lash out in other ways, and that's not going to be very good. So I'm giving you little tips and tricks to just make sure you're taking care of yourself so your baseline is not already starting at a high distress level. Now, many people, I think, are taught self-care incorrectly, right? When somebody says self-care, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go get my nails done, or I'm gonna go, take a bubble bath. Okay, you might need that, but that's not necessarily self-care. Self-care is the act of attending to physical or mental health, all right? The act of attending to it. It's not supposed to be viewed as this luxury, but it's supposed to be viewed as something that's helping you with your daily stressors, making sure that your plant is being given everything that it needs, all the nutrition that it needs, the sunlight, the water, everything that it needs. That's what self-care is. It's becoming more aware of your stressors and what those stressors are taking away or how they're impacting you and how you can better manage them. So, self-care is also self-awareness. You have to know when you're being impacted. So, I'll give you a personal example. When I start to stress, I start to clean. I hate it. And I mean deep clean. Like I'll start getting in the corners of my shower. I'll start cleaning baseboards feverishly. I don't like cleaning, right? So I know I'm only doing it because I'm really upset and I'm trying to get my anger out in some way, shape, or form. And I also don't want to talk to anybody in that moment, right? So I have talked to my spouse, telling him, when you see me do this, I'm upset. I'm distressed. I need you to come talk to me. I need you to say, hey, take a moment. There's something going on. Stop what you're doing, right? This is where that self-awareness piece gets in, so that not only do I find it for myself, but I'm having, somebody who loves me and knows me and can hold me accountable, tell me, stop what you're doing before you get more distressed and do something that's good for you. There are checklists like this, right? That again, now you'll have access to, that can help you think about, well, what is going on with me? Why am I so distressed? That's going to help increase your self-awareness. And then I have another checklist that you have access to, where I want you to start thinking about, all right, now that you know what's being taken away from you that may be causing this distress, or the issues that are happening that may be causing this distress, what do you need for yourself to kind of fill yourself back up? And that's how I want you to think about it. How can you nourish yourself? How can you fill yourself back up? How can you give yourself some energy? And again, there's some things we don't even think about that we know that would be really helpful to us. So cooking is that for me. And I've actually done culinary therapy with some of my clients where we cook a cultural meal together and discuss how memories we have around that food and cooking with our abuelitas and, learning how to make homemade vinaigrettes with our abuelitos, using the plants that they've grown in their backyard, and doing that together, and how that offers nourishment and how that offers energy and self-care back to ourselves. So it could be lots of things. So I had somebody ask me a question about the role of the eldest daughter, and issues with kind of taking on that caretaker fixer role in the family. And that impacts many of us. I have spoken on a number of podcasts about that particular topic. So I'm going to share this with you. This is a Mother's Day card that my eldest child gave me, not this past Mother's Day, but the one before. This was her Mother's Day card to me. And when I first looked at it, this was my initial reaction. Now, I try my best to be a good mom and be grateful for the things that my kids do. So I had to change my face really fast, right? And I was like, thank you. This is so beautiful. But when I had a moment to myself, I reflected on why I was so bothered by this card. This is how my child, and probably my children, see me. They see me with 8 different arms. They see me doing work and books and cooking, and the arm on the one side in the purple bottle, that's a hand sanitizer. So my kids think I'm a germaphobe. There's a announcement speaker there. I mean, they see me and they see like, oh, mom is just a super mom. She just does everything. She's got to do everything all the time. That's not the message that I want to send to my children, particularly not my girls. That's not the message. That I got to be the one who does all the cooking, all the cleaning, working, having 8 different roles in the family. That's not the message I want for them. And so I had to really take a hard look at myself about how I was sending messages to my children about not resting, about always having to work, about always having to do everything. And so to that question that I got, I'm not the eldest daughter. I am, in fact, the youngest child in my family. But I was given that role of being the caretaker. So I caretake them, my parents, my family, all right, my own individual family at home. I run a business, so I caretake my business, my employees, right? My hands are all over the place. And apparently I'm sending the message that I don't ever stop. I don't stop for a break. I don't stop to take care of myself, right? Who needs to do that? And the issue with this is what I've called hyperindependence. And that's what I see happening with many of our individuals in the Latino community who have taken on that early adultified, parentified caretaker fixer role. All right. So, what's the issue with hyperindependence? Well, there's a whole lot that we see. We see issues with setting boundaries. We see issues with self-abandonment, meaning you avoid your own emotions and pain because you're too consumed with people pleasing. You self-sacrifice, so your needs go by the wayside in order to maintain relationships, in order to maintain the peace. We see constant self-sufficiency, which means you're not asking for help. We see this line of thinking around, I can handle it, I can do it all by myself. I do a better job anyway, so I'll just take care of it, right? Which leads to a lot of burnout at the end of the day. And we see this storyline of constantly trying to prove you're enough, constantly trying to prove your worth. So we see this in the form of like being a high achiever, being a perfectionist, constantly saying yes to extra work or overcommitting yourself. And this leads to, again, a lot of not only psychological issues, but physical issues as well. Like your body can only take so much, your mind can only take so much. And if you're just constantly on overload, at some point it's going to give way. It's going to tell you, I'm stopping you no matter if you like it or not. And we don't want to get to that point. So this image of hyper independence, I really hope that you take this with you and you share this one, because it is happening to so many of us, especially right now, those of us that feel like we want to do more, we want to advocate more, we want to push more. And I want you to remember, you can do that, but not cut off your nose to spite your face, as they say. Don't do that and then self-abandon yourself. Don't do that and then not caretake for yourself. Don't do that and then miss out on your needs and your time to rest. We can't do good for the world if we're constantly fatigued and exhausted and over it, right? So with that, we want to make sure that we have tools to cope with all of this, right? So one of them is this idea of self-advocating, and that is taking care of yourself early and often. There's this storyline, this narrative around, when something's going wrong in the plane, and then the masks come down, and they say, put your mask on before you put it on somebody else, right? And I'm like, okay, that's a great idea. Make sure that you have the air. My problem I have with this is that you only are putting the air, the oxygen in you, but the plane is already going down. How is that going to help you when the plane is already down? I don't want you pulling an oxygen mask in and saying, finally, I need to breathe for myself, only when the plane is going down. I need you to take care of yourself early and often. That oxygen mask needs to be a daily, weekly, repetitive thing where you give yourself life and making sure you nourish yourself and give yourself what you need so that you can keep putting up the fight, right? Fighting the good fight, as they say. To self-advocate also means you need to find and use your resources. This is not a time to be hyper independent. Let me do it. I can do it. I'll just take care of it. No, we need to be able to share the wealth right now, right? We need to be able to work in tandem with other community members, with other organizations. If we each take a little piece, then the work isn't so heavy. Really important to think about. Find ways to support your community as well, right? So you maybe feel like, okay, I haven't been able to do anything on a larger level. So maybe there's an organization where I can offer, food to a food bank because there's a lot of food insecurity going on right now. Maybe it's me sharing, a business that's been having a hard time staying afloat because the community isn't going out to eat at that business because they're scared of ICE coming. Maybe you can find ways to support that business, right? Buying food there or at least sharing it on social media. Hey, let's all support this business this week, this month, whatever the case may be is. And then communicate your needs. What is it that you need? We aren't mind readers. And in fact, there is a confirmation, there's a bias that we have, a cognitive bias called mind reading, where we think we have the ability to be able to do that. We do not. So if you need something, you have to open your mouth and you have to say it. And just because maybe the first person you ask says no, doesn't mean that you give up. No should not stop you. Remember, resistance and perseverance are two of our superpowers as Latinos. No just means I got to go about it another way, another route, another person, right? So communicate your needs and make sure they get heard and attended to. So one of the strategies that I want to teach you is called the palm of control. And literally, I want you to take your hand and draw it on a piece of paper. and then draw this kind of circle on the outside of it. Right now, there's so many things out of our control. And if we continue to focus on those things, it's going to help amplify that catastrophizing that this administration wants us to do. So we need to focus on what's in our control. What can I do? That's not only going to help us with, making sure that we stay here in our brain, focused, in control, rational, able to think straight, able to come up with different options, but it's also going to keep us from, something that somebody had mentioned about burnout, right? And trying to do so much, trying to focus on so much, being distressed about things that are out of our control, that then we feel immobilized, like we can't do anything. Great activity. Write down in your hand, once you draw it, what is in your control that you can do. You can also write down on the outside what's outside of your control, so that you know what you need to be focusing on, where you need to be putting your energy, and what you need to, at this point, what we call is radical acceptance, which is accept what you can't control. You may not like it, and in many cases, you're not going to like it, but accept what you can't control and change what you can. So, signs and symptoms that I need you all to be on the lookout for. 1, if you're doing your daily check-in, seeds, darse, halt, you'll know when things aren't going very well for you. I'm having issues with sleeping. I'm having issues with eating. I'm having issues with getting angry or externalizing those behaviors often. I'm having issues with taking my medication. The medication isn't working right, whatever the case may be is, right? So that's the first place I want you to go to. Sign and symptoms 2, is very cultural for us. So as Latinos, research has found that we tend to have somatic symptoms first, or at least that's what we first think they are. So think about our saying, ataque de nervios, right? Like your nervous system is like kind of going all over the place. And they think that it's just a physical manifestation, like, oh, there's something wrong, maybe I need to take medicine, I have headaches, I have stomach aches, I have body aches, maybe I have the flu. They just start to pinpoint these somatic symptoms, and they just put it on that. It's just that I'm sick, it's just that I have a headache, I must have eaten something bad, those kinds of things. So we tend to look at somatic symptoms first. But what we know is that underneath those somatic symptoms are the psychological ones that are actually causing these somatic issues. So that depression, that anxiety, possible issues from past trauma, that's what's wreaking havoc inside your body, that constant flood of cortisol and stress, wreaking havoc inside your body. And now your body's like, well, since you're not listening to that, I'm going to start to show you some signs and symptoms in physical ways. And maybe you'll start listening to those. 3, I need you to consider this idea of hyperindependence that I just taught you about. How much is that impacting you? How much do you kind of need to pull back on that? How much do you need to actually start reaching out for help, asking for what you need, communicating your needs, not waiting till that plane is going down before you pull an oxygen mask on you? And then 4, I need you to consider for yourself what other signs and symptoms you need to look for. It doesn't matter that we're all Latinos, we're all unique human beings and individuals. That means we also have unique signs that we need to be self-aware of. I just shared one with you. One of my signs is this weird deep cleaning thing that I do. I know it's a sign of distress for me. I have other signs as well, though, right? And that includes somatic signs, stomach aches and headaches. I know that for me to be true, but I have other signs as well. I get very short, right? My temper starts to come out. That's another sign of mine. I need people to start being self-aware of their own unique signs so that they know when this happens, I've got to do something about it. I can't just keep letting it escalate. So I want to teach you a little bit about the nervous system so that you can understand a little bit more about why we got to take care of ourselves. All right. So I'm giving you two visuals, whichever one kind of suits you best, whichever one helps you, then that's the one I want you to use. So our nervous system is like a traffic light. Okay. When it's feeling good, we're on the green light. Traffic is flowing. We feel safe. We feel engaged. It's all going well. When that light turns yellow, when our nervous system turns yellow, it's a warning sign to us. Hey, I feel threatened. Hey, I think we're in danger. And it starts to do one or two or both of these things. We start to go into a fight or flight scenario. All right? That's a warning system. Things aren't going well. At that point, we've got to do something. Really, at the point of green, we need to keep doing things to keep us in the green. But if something should happen that should trigger our distress and trigger our nervous system and move us into the yellow, we need to be able to recognize it, and then we need to be able to calm our nervous system down. All right. And then the red light is really crisis. It's not good. This is life-threatening, something in your body, right? And it's really coming from your brain. The amygdala, which we say is like the fire alarm of the brain. Think about when you've been in school and you have those practice fire alarms, but you're never told that it's a practice, right? Because they want you to act like it's a real thing. That fire alarm goes off and everybody jumps really fast. And then we move into action. We got to get everybody in line. We got to get everybody out to the safety and destination place. It's no time to freeze, but that initial freeze, that initial jump that startles our heart, that's the initial thing that tells us this is something life-threatening. What tends to happen in life-threatening situations is that we freeze or we immobilize, which means like we can't do anything. We're stalled. We're helpless. And that's the state that this administration wants us to be in. That's why they're crisis manufacturing. Because if we freeze and we immobilize and we don't do anything, then they can harm us more. They can take advantage of us more. So the other image kind of adds like a yellow and orange, right? It gives you a little bit more space for you to see where you're at. But notice how when you're thriving, you can perform, you can take things in strides, you've got good appetite, good sleeping patterns, you're able to effectively communicate, you can rationalize, you can think straight, you can make good decisions. But notice how we start moving into the yellow and orange and red, all those things start to go downhill exponentially until you get in a crisis stage. And if you're like, I can't survive this, again, your body now is going to shut everything down, saying, let's just freeze, let's just immobilize, let's just be helpless, because that's the only way to survive right now. That's not where we want to be. So it's really important for you to recognize when your nervous system is moving in these phases to get your nervous system back to green. And all of those protective factors that I gave you early on in the presentation, those protective factors will help your nervous system. The more of them you do and you engage in, they'll help to keep you in the green, right? In addition to some of the other things that I'm going to teach you. So this is a SUD scale. I have it on my website. You can download it for free. This is a great tool that I give to all of my clients to help them start to be self-aware of when they start to escalate, right? When they start to move from thriving to crisis. And it breaks it down by numbers 1 through 10 so that you can really be self-aware of those minute, nuanced changes in yourself that move you from feeling not distressed, from feeling alert and concentrated, to all of a sudden moving into a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, right? Moving up that distressed level. You need to be aware. And the second piece is then you got to do something about it. You can't keep climbing on the SUDS ladder and without doing something about it. Because once that happens, I've showed you what your nervous system is going to do. It's going to take over, and then you're going to be immobilized. And that's the worst state to be in right now. We need to stay in that green, recognizing that, yeah, when I become distressed, I might move into that yellow or orange. Fine. But now you got to do something about it to get yourself back down to the green, right? That's where the tools, the coping tools, the distress tools, being with community, finding joy, being an advocate, taking some action, that's where that will help you calm your nervous system back down again. Immigrants Rising is a wonderful organization. I love working with them. I love finding, tools that they have on there. So these are two that they've put on their website, naming your triggers, and then journaling about what you're feeling right now and what you need to be able to do for yourself in this moment, right? So I love it how it's forcing you to identify and then take action, which is really important in order to calm your nervous system down. Your nervous system needs to know, nope, we got this, we're in control, we're going to take some action. I always say another way to kind of be informed, calm our nervous system down, is to do these 3 tasks. 1, do some research on your roots, where you come from. That'll help you get that cultural wealth that we talked about. Find your family stories. Find your community's stories. Find stories just from other Latino and Hispanic communities. I mean, we all have a connected history. So what happened with some amazing people in Mexico, and what happened with some amazing people in Puerto Rico, where I'm from, and what happened with some amazing people in Colombia, I can share in those. Those are my family too, right? Those are my roots too. So even if you don't have something individual that you can connect with, we can find collective community stories that show us where we come from, what our roots are, what type of strength that we have. Develop your Latinx identity with a purpose. With a purpose. It's not just raising a flag on the day of our independence, right? But it's also shaping your identity to be proud, to use your ethnic identity as a source of pride and purpose and advocacy for yourself and your community. And then 3, doing something, creating an action plan that includes some kind of like reading to know more about us as a population and a people, a goal around your health and your wellness to help you make sure that you're staying in that green so that, again, you have another day to fight the good fight. At one of my presentations, I met this wonderful individual named Armando Sanchez, and he created a Latinx culture resource library, right? He saw what I had created, these lists of books and articles and media, and he was like, oh, I created one too, and I'd be happy to share it with you. And I was like, yes. So now we've gotten multiple sources of not only just reading, but multimedia to connect with our culture, to find strength, to go back to that La Cultura Cura saying that in our communities there is wealth. And if we don't know it all, then let's go find more of it so that we can use that. I have lots of other resources for you. So my organization, my therapist and I, we created videos around conversations about mental health in the immigrant community. We did it in English, we did it in Spanish, And then I did a 3-part series on mental health that talks about kind of the more serious side of things like depression and suicide, suicide-related thoughts and behaviors that we're seeing really impact our immigrant, in particular our Hispanic community right now. One of the questions that I had from the community here was about a strategy called tapping. And I use tapping with my clients a lot. It's a strategy that I really do believe in, and I believe it's really supportive and healing. And so what I did is I created a video of me engaging in the tapping technique. So you all have access to that. And then I also created a kind of step-by-step how do you tap worksheet that goes along with the tapping video that you all have access to as well. And if I have time, I'll do a little demonstration with you all at the end. I also have a bunch of podcasts and other multimedia for some of my other individuals who ask questions around family values and, how do we have boundaries with our family, but also, recognize that there's this familismo value that we have in our community. So a lot of this media kind of talks about that. And I wanted to also address that with another skill that I'm going to teach you in a minute right now. So this is a skill that I call 3x3x3. And it's how to offer compassion, not only for yourself, but for others. I don't have a podcast, but I'm constantly being asked to talk on podcasts, and I absolutely love it. I just don't have, any kind of technology skill. But if I did, my podcast, now this is being recorded, right, Carlos? So everybody knows what my podcast name is. My podcast would be called Intrusive Love, because I don't like the idea of boundaries. I think it's a very westernized, Americanized term. And I don't like the idea of codependence, which I also think is a very westernized, Americanized term. I think what our community does is what I call intrusive love, that where they're coming from, I believe my perspective is from a place of compassion and empathy with our community. And so I think what many of our family members and our community members doing is actually coming from a place of love. When my mom used to call me sin vergüenza, and in fact, she still does. She thinks that I speak my mind way too much. It's from a place of her being scared. She's scared that if I speak up too much, that I will be harmed. That if I, open my mouth to the wrong people, that somebody's going to want to come and hurt me. She's scared. And this 333 really helps you to start to understand where people are coming from and to change the perspective around it. So for ourselves, some of us need self-compassion. Those of us that are constantly feeling like we're unworthy, and that's why we got to do more and push more and hustle more, this 3x3x3 self-compassion may be very good for you, right? So I want you to consider 3 ways that you are similar to others. That's going to help you to create a sense of belonging and connectedness with others in the community. I want you to think of 3 things that you admire about yourself. This is going to force you to be encouraging towards yourself. Encouragement is a powerful protective factor. It's one of the things I said early on in this presentation. We need to be encouraging to each other, right? But that also means being encouraging to yourself. And then 3 reasons why you may think or behave in the way that you do. And it's to offer compassion around the way that you may think or you behave. Think about the influences that have been in your life that have shaped the way you think, that have shaped the way you behave. And that way you can offer yourself some awareness and also some compassion. Like, oh, I know why I do that. Now, remember also then that palm of control. If you don't like it and you have the capacity to change it, then change it. If you don't like it and it's something you don't have the capacity to change, then what you have to work on is radical acceptance. I don't like it, and I understand that that's the way that it needs to be for now. Now, the other side is self-compassion and empathy for others, right? So that family member that drives you crazy, that says the most radical things that you just want to run away from, that distresses you every time you go to a family function. Trust me, most of my clients talk about something like that, right? So this is where we practice 3x3 with other people. 3 ways that you're similar to that person. So that again, you can recognize you have a sense of belonging and connectedness with that person. It's not just the distress, right? We're more than just one side. 3 things you admire about that individual. And you can always find them, even if they're in the littlest of things, right? You like the way that they wear their hair. You like the way that they smile. You like the way that they, their cooking is amazing. Whatever the case may be is 3 things where you can say, yeah, I really do like that about that person. I admire them about that, right? And then 3 reasons why they may think or behave in the way that they do. And that really requires that empathy for somebody else. Everybody has a story. Even the person that's driving you most wild, there's a reason why they behave in the way they do. There's a reason why they think the way that they do. And it may cause us, distress, and we may not like it, and we may not agree with it. If we can start to understand why we think they may do that, it's going to help us to offer compassion and empathy, which is way better to carry than feelings of hate and distress. With that said, I had somebody ask me a question around how do you address existing indifference in other communities towards our current situation? And to that, I will say 1, you may need to offer some other compassion for them, right? They're indifferent. It may make you upset. Okay, you might want to try this activity just for you to understand them a little better, right? But 2, I will have to be honest as a therapist, what we understand about the psyche, about psychology, about human behavior is that we cannot change people's personal beliefs. It's not our job to do that, nor even if it was our job, we wouldn't be able to do that. A core belief is something that somebody has internalized over time. Now, what we can do is help to make them aware of how that core belief impacts them and impacts people around them. And that's really our job if we choose to take that job on. I need you to understand how this behavior impacts the way I see you, impacts the way we connect, impacts the way we connect as a society. What you choose to do with that information now is yours to do with. You're a human being. You have choice. But if you think you want to take the task on of changing people's personal core beliefs, you're in an uphill battle that's never going to end. I choose to support in making people more aware, more self-aware, and offering compassion and empathy and trying to teach that. And what they do with it is what they do with it. So we're getting to the end here. Seeking help and support. I kind of put it into like 3 steps, all right? Step 1, you got to acknowledge what you're feeling. We say in this field, if you can feel it, you can heal it, right? Don't try to run away. Don't try to avoid. Right now is the time you got to communicate and acknowledge and validate and affirm what is going on with you, what you're feeling, and what you need. Step 2, go after what you need, whether it's self-resourcing and or community resourcing, but using healthy tools is really important. And if you don't have enough tools, then you got to ask for more. You got to go find some more. And step 3 is, if all of that is still not working and you find yourself constantly in the yellow and red light section, then I really highly suggest that you seek professional help before it becomes a crisis, right? On my website, if you ever go to it, the first thing you will see is a unity statement, a statement of solidarity. And I end with saying, together we will heal, juntas sanaremos, because we are here to heal, to support. You are not alone. We can find you support if that's what you need and want. All right, I did my best to try to answer as many of these questions that people sent as possible. You know, somebody had asked about, the last thing I'll say is, before maybe I open it up to a question or two, somebody had asked about finding employment. It's really hard for me to answer that question without knowing what type of issue are you having with employment. Is it because your documentation status, or is it because of the economy right now? That would depend on the answer that I would give to that. However, I would say that if you are here listening to this, please reach out to me personally. And I would be able to give you more support around resources for employment services, even if you are undocumented. The ILLCF did a presentation on how to start a business in the state of Illinois. And for many undocumented individuals, that is a route to getting a good living wage, is being your own boss, starting an organization, doing contract work. So they have a recording, I believe, of that meeting as well. So you could reach out to Juan Carlos and the ILLCF team if you'd like to see that. But Immigrants Rising also has a lot of documents around that, and they call it the Undocu Hustle. So how do you make a good living wage while being undocumented? What are the legal routes for you to get some income right now? But again, any very specific questions, please feel free to reach out to me individually, and I'd be happy to share additional resources with you. All right, 5 minutes to spare.